Hey, were you having?
Okay. Well, the meeting is called to order. We have Parks and Commons Commission, July 1st. And welcome everyone, visitors, and do we have anybody online?
Thank you, sir.
So I can Neil.
It worked.
Okay. So we want to do our roll call, so we'll just go around.
Adam Walton.
Dan Wright.
Meg Simons.
Ron Simons.
Gio Jordan. John Craver.
All right. And just a call for preparedness, we did get a chance to read the agenda. And I know that work group report came in late, so hopefully everybody had a chance to at least peek at it. I think, yeah. Yeah, you
Yeah.
did?
Yeah.
Okay, okay, great. Excellent. Okay, as far as announcements, well, we have two resignations on our commission that
Isn't it?
you know about. Dan Sterling and myself. And I feel they warrant a conversation today, but I'd like to go ahead and give space for that later in the meeting under our commission guidelines. Okay? So just know we're gonna get there today. Okay, so let's see, public comment. I don't see anyone, any public comment. Okay. And then we're to review and approve our last June meeting minutes. Any corrections or questions on those? Okay, all good? All right. Thanks, Kimmy. Those are great. Okay, onwards to our reports. We'll start with the Commons report. And I see Rosa back there. Did you have any highlights for us, Rosa?
Just working on a bunch of like bigger projects,
Thank you.
I've been working on things other than the Commons, the Little Rock Church Museum, the library is also gonna be opening up the meeting space, so a lot going on with that. But as far as Commons, we've been working on the Greater Commons Master Plan, they're gonna go over all of that. We finally have the basketball hoops scheduled to go up. The multipurpose room has to be shut down for 4 days for the project, so working around all of the schedules and all of the events. We're gonna finally schedule it for the first week of August. I'll just have to work with Big Band on their setup because it would just be the last tail end of their project. It should be fine. And then we have the bathroom project that turned into like the North End Commons project. We finally have that all situated and the architect is now coming up with designs, so then we can send it on over for building permits and send it out for bid and get that started. So that's great news. We have the sound system scheduled and we're in contact with Jeremy's. Yeah, thank you. We also have a live music event that the city is gonna be putting off on August 16th. I'm just waiting for the lead band member to get a hold of me to let me know what their needs are. So I can get that scheduled on the books and but that's underway. And then let's see here, what else? The Life app expansion, we have all of that information in a live document. That is to prepare for applying for that in the fall. That's probably gonna be the first phase of the Greater Master Plan. So we're working on that. I've also been meeting with a lot of folks for the emergency shelter, just in case of an emergency, setting up the Commons as an emergency shelter, what that looks like. And then I finally got the green light for the ordering supplies for the Commons. The budget is this month, right? So I'm gonna be ordering things for that and getting the rental packaging and prices updated. And I think that's Pretty much it.
Is that it? Wow, thank you. Yes.
Yeah,
I have a request, Rosa.
yeah.
Every month I review the packet and look at the Commons report, and there's a lot of information that's been completed like 6 months or a year ago that's still on there, and I have trouble finding what is new. Can we
Right.
either delete or archive or somehow highlight what's new this month?
Yes, I actually, Bobby and I had a meeting about how, just the old charting, system is not working. And I think I'm just gonna create something that's my own and not using something that was Crystal's and,
Okay,
yeah, so that's something that I definitely wanna update for sure.
even if instead of completed, you just put the date it was completed, and then we could just filter out everything that was completed more than 2 months ago or something like that, anything. Okay, thank you.
All right, yeah. Any other questions for Rosa? No, okay. All right, next is our work groups report. Trails and Utes. Mm. I know. She's like, oh no.
And stop on, trails on. Cemetery property.
Oh,
So I went and talked to her and said, I was not so interested in that. I'm really interested in one that goes across it,
Yeah.
that can then go all the way to diversity.
Yeah.
And she's with that.
awesome.
You get to talk about the next steps, in terms of other potential easements. And it could facilitate a trail from King Street where it curves all the way to the trailhead head of diversity.
That'd be so.
Cool. Great, Bob. Awesome.
Through there a bunch of times and
Yeah.
there's really no way to do it.
Oh, we talked about it, but you knew to consider. I think what she was looking for.
It's hard to hear, yeah.
We're having a private conversation.
I'm just on the audio.
And anyway, so we need to talk a little bit with Catherine and Bola check some things. And it could also be facilitate emergency egress.
Yeah,
You know, if the road is closed. So there's that in the option. And that's something that's 7 years in my mind, so. Put a different cemetery work.
yeah.
And then we could also say something about the grant application, which we're gonna go to Salem on the 29th. And make a presentation to the commission that will make a final decision. And I think it's pretty important. The grant has 120 possible points. 105 are fixed in categories, 15 are discretionary, so we're gonna get to 15, right? And I think that'll make a lot of difference. So hopefully we'll get together pretty soon. I've got some ideas about specific slides that we can talk about. And so that's what we know about those things.
Great.
Are we ever doing an Ivy poll again on the 804 or is that done?
That's up in the air.
Okay,
That project.
okay,
And the remaining thing, if he wants to do that, and there's this to talk about, I can't answer specific.
okay.
That's that question, because you would really like to.
Well, it used to be August and then COVID hit, and I don't know if we've had one since COVID with us.
One last year.
Okay. But yeah, the timing would have been coming up if we were gonna do it this year. That's why I asked.
It could happen. But
Thank you.
Great. Thanks a lot, Bob. Good work. Okay, and any questions on what you saw in the Keeping Yachts Beautiful work group report? It's pretty straightforward there. They're getting things looking great for the holiday visitors. Land property and commons under stage project, any?
Not much to report there. Prepping the trim that's gonna go in the doors and they noted, let's pick up some doors that there was service going on. So decided to not.
If it helps your schedule, George, competitive pickleball isn't in there during the summer. We're over at Quiet Water as long as the weather holds out. So Mondays and Thursday mornings, which usually we kept reserved in case we get inclement weather, but assuming it's not raining, we won't be there.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Yeah, John.
I'm not sure it's part of our agenda in our view, but I think last year on the 5th of July, I think Surfrider does beach cleanup. I don't know if that's scheduled. They had a team of people from
Yeah.
Yachats last year that did that. I haven't heard anything this year. They go up and down the coast, but I think there's a sign up at surfrider.org for people to go because it says the worst day of the year for trash on the
Yeah.
beach everywhere. So
Makes
they did
sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I
State Park last year at the point.
Mhm.
How long is that?
I think it is the 5th, but I don't know that I've heard anything locally.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything for this year. I remember seeing notifications about last year.
So last year was the chamber that put it on here and there was really not a large turnout for it. So, but the garbage was totally full when Dahl came up on the 5th of July in the morning. We put out a large, a garbage unit, at the top of the Yachats Ocean Road Park right there. And it was totally full when they got there in the morning, super early in the morning to clean it, so it would be, or dump it, so it'd be ready for the beach cleanup. And I showed up for the beach cleanup, Nicole showed up for the beach cleanup, and we were the only people that like officially showed up for the beach cleanup, because everybody just cleaned up themselves after the 4th of July event as they left the beach, and then there was just individual beach walkers that contributed to cleaning, but she and I combed the whole entire beach, and there was really not much. So we figured the same thing would kind of happen this year, so it hasn't been really published. But there will be an extra large dump unit and additional restrooms placed at Yachats Ocean Road this year for the 4th of July. And there's also going to be throughout the city and along the parade route, additional garbage cans placed and additional toilet units placed for the holiday weekend.
Bobby, was there another day with a cleanup in town that I'm remembering?
Saul did a cleanup on Earth Day.
Oh, okay, that's the one. I remember seeing quite a few people around town on one day, and I thought it was the 5th, but obviously it wasn't. Okay, thank you.
okay.
So there will be garbage can there and bags there and everything there for everybody.
Can keep a
people
few
to-
of them out permanently or
Uh,
not?
No, probably not. We are looking at with the Keeping Beautiful, it's beautiful, a proposal of doing some permanent units that would be they're called Big Belly. They're pretty expensive, so we're looking at putting a full proposal together to see where they should be and how much they would cost, if they should be recycle and garbage or just garbage. And they are ran by solar and have a Bluetooth, they're solar compact. And then they have a Bluetooth alert to Dahl or Public Works, whoever is responsible for dumping them, to when they're full. And they are like a door open and like a limited access, you can't just dump your personal waste in
Right.
there. And also seagulls and birds just can't grab it out when it's getting towards the top, but it's a really cool. I was just in Ashland when I was coming back from California, and the restaurant we stopped at, they had a recycle and a garbage one right outside the restaurant, excuse me, on the sidewalk, and they look beautiful. They can be wrapped with these ones said like visit Ashland and had a beautiful picture. It was promotional promotional thing that was set on it. They also, you could have like a list of all of the next quarter's upcoming events on it. You could have keep your beach clean. You could, you can put whatever you wanted to put on it. And this has been a conversation that's been at least about a year. We've been kind of looking at it, talking to the company, thinking about it, and kind of naturally you're getting to this new budget cycle, looking at how to implement that. If it'd be like maybe 2 to start with, 4 to start with, 1 garbage at each location, where to highlight them. So there's, and then the work we are looking at is, but not ready to fully present.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, cool.
Yes, there are, aren't they? They're really cool.
We should-
Yeah.
Incorporate those in the master plan, shouldn't we?
Yeah, beautiful trash cans. What a concept. It's great. Yeah. Okay, well, that's a good segue with master plan comment into our new business. We have 5 items today, and the first is welcome back, Chris and Shelby, for giving us the presentation on the latest. And I just want to say again how much we all appreciate your efforts, especially with the community engagement and just your really clear communication throughout the whole process. So thank you. All right.
Wow, I did it. That's pretty good. Yeah. Hi. Happy 4th of July coming up.
Yeah.
So Kristen, I'm really excited to share with you all the Greater Commons plan. And I just want to say thank you for trusting us with this project. It's been really for the whole team. We really enjoyed taking your community people within it, aspects of it. So thank you. This has been wonderful. So here's the project overview. This is what you hired us to do, was to create a visionary plan for the buildings and spaces, identify needed maintenance, identify best utilization of space, and possible capital improvements needed in the future to meet needs. Then our project area has been, as I'm sure you all know this, the Commons Building, City Hall, Commons Park, extending out to Sunset Park North and South, the library, as well as Little Log Church. And then we've also sort of been thinking about how this whole, area then ties into the rest of the city too. So I'm just going to talk a little bit for about 10-15 minutes and present the whole thing, and then we'll just open it up to discussion.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah.
So where we are in the process is we started in November, met with you, and met with a lot of different groups. We did analysis of existing studies and plans and of the buildings and spaces, and over the winter came out again in March with our design concepts, refined those, came out again in May to present the draft plan, and here we are with the final semi-final to present with you today. And then we're going to City Council later this month. It's kind of where we're at in the project. So part of our process has been, looking at all the previous studies that were done, which there are many, and as well as public surveys that were done, other design work that was done, sat down with a bunch of different groups, did interviews, questionnaires. We had 2 public surveys out there, one just to gain, an understanding of what people liked and what they disliked, and then another survey that asked them, more specifically, what things would you like to see here? Then we had 3 public meetings to solicit feedback. And then we met with our advisory group, which has been instrumental in developing this plan. They've been really wonderful, providing us with guidance. So we've had 5 different meetings with those folks. Just a few shots of our process, the public meetings, those wonderful ballots we had, asking people what they liked and disliked. I know it's a really wonderful thing when you have a public meeting and 75 people show up. It's amazing. It's just so helpful. We sat out in front of the the post office with our designs. We went into the Drift Inn and sat there one afternoon as well as City Hall. And just met with people who weren't able to come to those public meetings, but might just be out in the community. So I know Chris had some really interesting conversations in front of the post office. As part of our process. We had a wonderful model and it was just really fun actually doing all of this work. And learned so much about, you know, what makes the community tick, what the values are, what the preferences are, and eventually some things did kind of float to the top. And so that's really what we were trying to distill was, you know, what is it that makes this place special? And so I don't think I could have made this slide like 6 months ago, but now I'm like, it's this idea, I'm teaching to the choir, you all know what makes it special. But I think from a design standpoint, it's like the artistic abilities of your residents, the interest, the educated populace that you have, the fact that you do have a meeting and everybody shows up, there's this connection to the history, to the ecology. There's this interest in sustainability and then the arts and events, and that you want people to come here and enjoy themselves and then have, you know, the Commons be a place where everyone's welcome. And it's just such a magical place. So we came up with a vision early on, that's kind of too small on there, but just the idea that the Greater Commons is the heart of the community, right? It's where everybody wants to be. It's accessible, it's community oriented, functional, aesthetically pleasing, and reflects the unique culture of that, which is very similar to the mission statement. So it's kind of dovetails in there. And with the advisory group, we came up with a list of goals. So welcoming, accessible, aesthetic, you know, integrate those sustainability practices of emergency preparedness and climate resiliency, plan for accessibility and safety and security for everyone here. But then also honor the cultural heritage, create a multi-use space that appeals to as many people as we can and as many functions as we can, of lots of diverse activities, and then finally keeping in mind maintenance and upkeep. So those were our goals. Oh, education information. So that said, here's the visionary plan. Calling it visionary because, you know, we're hawks looking down on this wonderful landscape that we are going to, you know, create. I want to zoom in on that a little bit here. So again, the overall idea here, when I turn to look at other notes, is that we're creating, enhancing, I should say, this hub of energy that is the Greater Commons. We're integrating multiple uses, multiple generations, and finding a way that they can all kind of coexist harmoniously within this finite space. What the national plan does is it addresses critical needs. So we're looking at, you know, what is the ADA accessibility requirements? How do we get people into critical spaces? So kind of first and foremost, we're looking at like bathroom upgrades and parking upgrades and accessible ramps and things like that as like kind of the first foremost things that need to happen. But also then added on top of that, how do we make this place particularly welcoming and a place for people to gather and enjoy each other and interact within a beautiful setting? So just to start of this description of, we're actually going to be removing quite a bit of asphalt out there, would be the vision, and creating pedestrian oriented spaces. So like making places feel a little bit more soft. At the end of La Di Da Lane between the pavilion and the Commons building would be kind of this wonderful pedestrian corridor. We would try to have some soft surfaces, more plantings, places to sit and people watch. You can watch the kids play in the playground. You can connect down to 4th Street. And then there would be like removable bollards in there, so you could yank those up so that the emergency vehicles could still get through. And then the north end of La Di Da Lane would just still retain that parking because we still need parking up there. But then that spills out into the Commons Park. And what we've identified is reducing the amount of lawn that is out there. You'd still be allowed to bring your dog out there, but we would also integrate additional walking paths and trails, running paths, but with additional plantings. So pollinator garden, native plant species, bioswales to filter stormwater runoff before it gets into the wetlands. And then on the north end of that, bringing in a new market pavilion. So I'm calling it a market pavilion, or just a new pavilion that serves as a multifunctional space that could be used as a covered market. It could be used for indoor pickleball courts or other kinds of court spaces. It would have like an opening that would kind of open up and look out over that lawn. So we could have theater events or concerts, and then you could sit out on the lawn, open that up, when in the winter, close it up, it'd be nice and cozy in there, but still have a lot of light. It'd be a nice space for people to, use the restroom if they need to get information, but it's another space that the community can use. In addition to the Commons building, that just expands upon that usable space. And that was something that we heard again and again, was the need for that. Kind of moving to the west, the remainder of that park space just seems like it's working really well. So we just don't have any particular recommendations for like that green space, other than just improving the wayfinding experience through there and directing people kind of to those paths. Maybe there's an opportunity to have some public art out there as well. Kind of moving around where's my cursor? Oh, you can, there's my hand. Moving up this way, we're looking at having Fifth Street not connect all the way through here, but keeping the parking between City Hall and the Commons building. You could drive up and around City Hall, and just on the north side where that bank, building used to be, where you drive through and drop off your deposit or whatever, that would be turned into a new addition that would be for this room. So everybody would move out of here and up into that room. That way, you're freeing up this room for community use. Again, kind of another thing that the community would like to have more space for different events. So within this plan, we also have sustainability upgrades worked in. So solar panels on all the roofs, wind turbines and a cistern, and then as well as an addition to the Commons building with a new entrance up here for the community. And as Rosa mentioned, some new restrooms and reconfiguration of that. I'll show you an enlargement here. So this is the view just looking out across the park, and you can see the open lawn with the trails. That new pavilion space, it's kind of shaped like a crab kind of inspired thing, but you can also see the expansion of the City Hall over here, the La-di-da lane, pedestrian lane, looking at having a fire circle, designated fire circle behind the pavilion, additional restroom back here behind the Commons, and then an addition to the Commons building on the backside here. Just another view looking out towards the ocean in the City Hall addition. Behind City Hall, we're looking at removing that driveway back there. So that would be another pedestrian corridor, which would link really nicely with the skate park. The idea that there's actually there's a study out there, to get off topic, but there's a wonderful study out there about how to design spaces for teenage girls. And if you can make a design space that's really welcoming to them, it's pretty much welcoming to everyone. Like, and you feel comfortable sending your 13-year-old out there, So anyway, where I'm going with this is like providing them with a space where they can watch people skate or skate themselves. It's really good. So just wanting to integrate the skate park into the rest of the landscape a little bit better. It's kind of the idea where I was headed with this notion here. But on the left side of this, you can see the addition to the Commons building here, and that is the idea for that is to improve accessibility, but also have a nice space where you can go in, take off your coat, get your chit chat with somebody while everybody else is in the space, get a ticket or whatever you want.
So just to clarify, that new entrance is actually an expansion of the building itself.
It is.
Okay, that wasn't clear.
Good. So we just look at circulation and access, just kind of breaking that out. You can see this whole new network of paths that would run through the park. This blue bit here on the south end of La-di-da is that pedestrian corridor. And then the yellow is all a parking area. We are looking at having some new parking along 6th Street as well as down along 4th. Diagram for parks and open space. You can see all the new greenery that we're adding. You can see the little bee here with the pollinator garden, and then the bioswales along the edge here, the reduced size of the lawn, and some new plants there along the La-di-da. Part of the plan, we're providing you with just a few ideas on how to do wayfinding here. And you have some little signs already, but it could be kind of cute, variation, I think, to integrate some artwork into that wayfinding system. And there's lots of different ways to do that. And we're giving you just a couple ideas of like where you might, put down some public art, how to direct people across the site and to the rest of the community beyond. Nice public art idea. And then the other thing the master plan will include is kind of ideas for like a consistent color palette to use for buildings and structures as well. So that's something we're actually still kind of developing, but we have this idea of like a pelican color. Which may or may not float, but yeah. So I'm kind of pulling colors from
A
nature.
pelican color, you mean brown?
White pelicans.
Colors of the itself.
Yeah, or something coming from nature, I think is what we're kind of leaning towards, but well, that will be in the plan as well. So then moving on to buildings, and you can see the new pavilion that is up here on the north end of Commons Park. The addition to City Hall, and then the addition down here to the Commons building. And the perspective here of what that addition to the Commons building could look like. Again, this is a master plan, so there's still a lot of details that need to be worked out here. And really what we're providing you with is like a square footage, and that the addition would go here. After talking with Christy at YFAP and the rest of the advisory group, assessing the fact that this addition is very much needed, both for safety as well as expansion and wanting to keep the space multi-generational, which just kept coming up again and again. And in that way, the rest of the Commons building is able to be used for community uses, which is, vast. So that's sort of a schematic of what that could look like there. You can also see the pedestrian la-di-da down here. Back here on the back side of the Commons building is a new restroom. And then an enlargement of City Hall, what we're imagining the council chambers room would look like. Perhaps there's a way to get in. I like the idea of there getting a way to get in, but you're not going through the rest of the offices, so you can go through the vestibule and then into council chambers, and maybe there's even a nice connection to that new pedestrian corridor next to the skate park back here. And then the Commons building itself. So in this one, what we're looking at doing is having that addition on the south end, this southwest end of the building, which adds 2 classrooms, a multiple, and then there would be like a basement, and in that basement would be a kitchenette as well as a multi-purpose room for the children. And what this does is it allows the YFAP to be separate and secure from the rest of the community building. So you can have the community, the rest of the building can be open to the public while this other area can be closed off. So the existing, entrances would be retrofitted to be accessible, and those are community entrances. So this door, the door back here, and then the YFAP would be through the new entrance on the southwest corner of the building in the entrance. So they would have their own entrance and their own vestibule way to get in, and they're all kind of their own space, but still be part of the Commons building. The other things we're looking at are the things that Rosa mentioned, putting in accessible restrooms up here adjacent to the green room, shifting offices over here, as well as that entrance vestibule here. Expanding the multi-purpose room so it's a little bit bigger for events, and then shifting the existing kitchen and lounge or cafeteria down here. So the kitchen's here and the dining room / lounge, place to hang out. Somebody said, I want to go someplace where there's always a pot of coffee on and just hang out. So there's your lounge kind of area. And then again, you can see we're just retrofitting the building with the room that we're sitting in into a multi-purpose room for various uses. See, in the basement, we're looking at retaining the Friends of the Library space as well as developing and having a makerspace down there. So that would be a place where makerspace could be like any kind of arts and crafts or sewing or pottery studio or anything like that down in there. It was something that went over pretty well in the public survey. So,
Shelby,
yes.
these existing restrooms right out here,
Mhm.
is there anything in there about upgrading, retrofitting those bathrooms?
Yes,
Okay.
there is, absolutely.
Okay.
Those would need to be, retrofitted, so they're ADA.
Yeah, that's what I wondered.
Yes. Okay, so the other bit we've talked about is phasing, like how this should all, be, how this is all going to unfold. And so we talked about doing things in, stage 1, 2, and 3. With 1 being, doing those ADA compliant restrooms, which you already have a grant for, you're working on it right now already. So getting those done, and then doing the Commons building expansion would be kind of also another priority, as well as doing kind of the south end of Lottie Down Lane. I think could also be a priority for you. It's not that expensive. And then stage 2, you could look at doing the new pavilion, and then you could also look in that that same phase, doing the expansion to the multi-purpose room and the shifting of the kitchen. Then stage 3, looking at doing the city hall expansion, updates to the green space, and all those sustainable features. And you guys can kind of obviously judge this as you move forward, but these were ideas that we came up with. As part of our work, we provided you with a cost estimate. I know you can't read this, but I've got it up here in case we want to look closer at it. The Commons building expansion is 4.2 million. City hall expansion and the adjacent site work is 1.2. The Lottie Da Lane work is 700,000 about. Multi-purpose room expansion is 1.7 million. New pavilion is 2.8. Updates to the green space is a reasonable 464,000. And the signage, wayfinding, and public art is 21. And these are all in 2025 dollars. I didn't adjust them for inflation or anything like that. So just so you can kind of compare apples to apples, as you're thinking about what do we want to do next. And the cost estimator included a 15% contingency in that as well, which includes like things, unknowns and design fees. They're a wee bit inflated. That makes sense. Okay. Conclusion. Okay, so I think what we've provided with you here is, the ability to plan for next steps. We've identified kind of actionable projects. So each one of these things we're talking about is kind of is highlighted as a project that you can then go after. If you're ready for grant applications, which it sounds like you're already starting to do, you have next steps for, hiring the next designer or, community group or whatever you need committee to develop the next set of things, and to kind of keep going. So our final deliverables for you will be, a final document. It's actually just a PDF with all of our background research that we've done, and it has a copy of all the public surveys and everything, a summary of past studies, all of our work, and then it has a comprehensive, comprehensive document of the plan and all drawings. So it's written and graphic, and the cost estimate is in there as well. So yeah, I think with that, we'll open it up to questions and comments, and just thank you for being you. It's been really wonderful.
Back at you.
Yeah.
Great presentation, Chuck.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
Well, it's a great piece of work. I mean, obviously you guys had a lot to contend with to kind of figure out. And for the most part, I think it's most of what we're looking for. It's kind of a little daunting looking at the price. I mean, to do all of it is about $20 million, somewhere in that range.
When you talk the phases, like what would be projections for like what phase, like timelines for phase of things?
Didn't look too direct at I think a lot of times we're looking at 0 to 5 years for sort of phase 1 implementation, sort of a staggered rollout, if you will, of that rather than all at once. And I think we looked at that 0 to 5, 5 to 10, and then that sort of 10 to 20 for larger scale items such as the van shell, additional space there. I know that some of the conversation we had about that kind of phase 1 work also is including the acoustic for the that would be underway in hopes of being achieved by November for the Celtic Music Festival. also looking at, I think, some of the larger ticket items, you know, those are very conservative in a sense, in terms of the cost, and something that I feel like could be further refined and really focus on what we call value engineering in terms of how those sticker shock, you know, is perceived.
Yeah, so any, I guess if you're in the middle of phase one, you would hope to, like, the work that's done in here would get completed funded before you go, like, you would do the commons and try to
Go
backwards, that way, then what if you run out of money in the middle of the
Absolutely.
bathrooms?
Yeah.
Doesn't have plumbing in it or something.
Ouch.
So, you know, those kind of things.
Yeah.
Money.
I think a lot of the framework is intended to be established around grant applications and funding sources. I don't foresee the city proper funding all these directly out of its own revenues. I think-
Cookie sales or anything like that.
Thought we'd have a car wash.
That could help. I think a lot of it is going to be driven on grant application, the grants become available. So there has to be some degree of fluidity there. Those are-
And also to kind of tag on to that, the cost estimate, if you look at it closely, we have like a few assumptions in there, like, for example, I'm more of an outside person. But so for example, like the Lottie Dot Lane, like when the cost estimator asked me, well, what exactly are you thinking? I'm like, well, I want, some trees and planters, and I want it to be paved with pavers, permeable ones, and those are kind of pricey. So it's like, depending on like, when you get further along in the design, you can kind of make those decisions, like, well, maybe we just want it gravel, because that's a lot cheaper. You can kind of make those decisions, so I think that's kind of the difficulty with doing a cost estimate when you're doing a plan at this level. It's hard to know, like, what are those materials? Are we doing marble, or are we, so, yeah, it'll get more, as you move through these things, you can get a better price estimate for each project, I think, as you get further along in the design for each one of them.
So I'm assuming that the price for the multi-purpose room expansion includes a new kitchen and the lounge remodel.
Yes.
Under that, okay.
I had a question about you've recommended a new pavilion. So the existing pavilion we have, do you have an opinion about what to do, how to do that?
I can speak to, I think, so the value in repair of that exists, right? It's a great structure. I think there's a sentimental attachment to it as well. It was built by the Lions, correct, or donated by the Lions. And in looking at that, we're talking about, I just put a ballpark out here, 235,000, I believe, for the repair. Does that sound accurate?
285.
Yeah.
285 for the repair of that pavilion. I spent a lot of time out there Friday, kind of walking around that, looking at it, looking at the cost of it, talking to Jane about it too, in terms of it's hard to just destroy a building, wipe it off. And I mean, we looked at what you could put in its stead. We talked about a basketball court or extending a full basketball court there, but I feel like you look at a structure like that that's built, that's intact, the wood's not in bad shape necessarily, it's the columns, it's safety. Is that money better spent investing into future vision? Is that, what can that money achieve in terms of improvements to the commons, to the new market pavilion? I don't think you're gonna get the same efficiency in that investment on a new structure versus what you could achieve with repairing and fixing that building up. I mean, it's very difficult in the kind of economy of construction right now. I think you see that with your new library as well. Cost of that library, what you're able to accomplish with limited dollars. That functionality and use, you wouldn't be able to build that structure right now for $285,000 as is. So to me, I think it's a real sort of point of inflection. Are you looking at that space serving a use for this vision. I mean, we have it in there still. We feel like it does fit. I would love to see it with a higher utilization rate. I think you would probably love to see that too. I mean, just being here today, walking around in the wind, this was actually one of the first days I've been here where I've really seen the effect of the wind.
Yeah.
When we were here Friday, we had kids playing softball in the park, which was amazing to see people using that as a softball field still. I thought that was incredible. That was something we'd heard about, but we'd never witnessed. So seeing some of these kind of hints and clues as they show up here, I really feel like your best efforts here are towards multiple uses and adaptability in the space. And to me, that pavilion might be better to that than a basketball court. Again, that's just my own insight. I know that pavilion was in conversation quite a bit. But I do feel like that money is a reasonable investment into that structure. We also talked about if you maybe use that money as a seed, if you will, into another project, funding revenue stream, perhaps there's a way to salvage the material from that pavilion. If it is deconstructed, perhaps it can be done in such a way that that material is still able to be reused. A lot of that structural timber is valuable of use. I know that's a long-winded response.
It's very thorough. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One question. Because we not sure what the pavilion requires in this whole master plan, it's always just been a question mark,
Mhm.
as in, what are we gonna use it for? So do we have a direction that we think we would use it for? Or would it just be a general, big, open, multi-purpose room?
I mean, my own sense of that is as the YFAP expansion occurs, I think that's a great opportunity for that space also as an exterior classroom, something that could be used in conjunction with the program or YFAP for one thing. I think we've talked a lot about that being a community resource, right, for birthday parties, outdoor gatherings, or some of your celebrations, the peace hike, New Year's Eve, solstices, and I think it also, in a way, I mean, you would have to sort of gauge that. I think there is a sentimentality around that structure as well. That's kind of the thing I've heard the most about is the
Intangible.
Lions donating that structure and how that would go over in the community if that structure were removed as a gift, right?
Do you know, Chris, if that figure, that $285,000 figure includes upgrading the building to full indoor, where it would be totally enclosed, heatable? Bobby's shaking her head yes, so that's what I was curious about. So
That, and I think the main, and Bobby, please correct me, my understanding of that is that primarily it's structurally driven, right? And then egress and safety for assembly use. Those are the two major components.
And then it will, weather in that top bit.
Yeah.
Well,
Mhm.
yeah. So next steps, yes.
Few last minute revisions to do,
Oh,
so then we'll be submitting it. Probably next week and go out to the city council.
Okay.
For their approval.
Okay, all right. Wonderful job. Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
Thanks for all the strips you made here.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Amazing. You're part of, be part of this project, outside of the project is top. It's fascinating. And for the council presentation on the 14th, I believe we'll be in attendance for that still.
114. It's on the 16th.
16th.
You will be here.
Bobby, are these documents allowed to be seen by the public yet, or not until after the council meeting?
Wait till after the council meeting. They are on a part of the agenda.
I know.
For today, but I don't think that we should be really
Okay.
trying
until they.
Yeah.
That's why I asked. Okay.
There is still a few last minute adjustments that are gonna be made post our advisory group meeting. And those need to get worked into that. And so I think that we're just right at that finish line. We should just wait to cross it and then we can really publish it and share it. I think. But I just want to thank you both and Jane and your whole team as well for all of the work that you guys have done. It's been a privilege to work with you on the project, and yeah, it's been very thorough and I'm very, very happy with it all. So thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
You're here.
All right, well, we'll continue along with item number 2 on our agenda is the Wetlands Boardwalk Signage Project. Our subcommittee had a second meeting a couple of weeks ago, and was there anything you wanted to kind of speak to, Adam or John?
No, I mean, I guess I'll just mention that reaffirming what we knew, that there are 6 entrances into that park. And really, there's only a trail map, although this isn't the current one, but at this entrance here behind the commons. And I think one of the prevailing thoughts was we should have maps available at all the entrances.
Yeah.
Agreed. And then that map there is specific just to the park, whereas with the map that's at the entrance is just the yacht, general yachts, all the trails and yachts. That's just, I don't know when that was made. I was got that from the visitor center, so that's what they're handing out. So that isn't even in the park. That kind of gives the history of the park and.
Right, okay, something.
Yes.
We, as I mentioned earlier, we are starting with reprinting of it right now. There, right, in the revisions, there have been a couple of minor corrections and a couple of minor changes. So, I don't thought you remember the timing on that. I think it's already been ordered. It's been ordered. Okay. And I do know that the visitor center was running low on and for sure. They're the ones that can take it all.
Okay.
So I just wanted to say that I was up at Beaver Creek hiking the other day and met with the host and was like, do you have this map in paper form? Because they have the trail map. And she's like, no, everybody just takes a picture now. And that way it's portable. And so we might consider that we might be beyond paper now.
We did discuss that, actually.
Yeah.
There's the little icon too that.
QR code.
I was talking
Yes,
about,
they
yeah.
can get it and then get even more information.
But a lot of people aren't gonna have good cell phone coverage where they could take a photo, but they might not be able to get QR code response. I know Verizon customers have a tough time.
Yeah. Bob,
There's actually a QR code
Bob?
on the map.
for maps out.
Oh. That's good feedback. Supports my.
Usage. You say usage statistics?
Every time the website's accessed, they make a note of it. I can't tell from which side it was accessed, but the 4 sides are accessed about 7 times in total.
That's not hot.
Yeah, that's once a day divided by 4 signs.
Yeah.
Not very much.
But that's the QR code, so.
True.
Yeah.
All the more reason kind of for my belief, which is QR code is, I mean, it's a great idea, but it may not be that functional for yachts.
Yeah, sticking a QR code on the map and having paper is great. I'm all for it, but I don't think we should rely on the QR code being the mechanism.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Yeah, agreed.
There's another point. If we're beyond paper, why are so many paper maps being taken in thousands?
Because we don't have big maps to take a picture of. I don't know.
From my experience working in centers and working, giving maps and stuff, the amount of people that go through that is very similar really do like to have something visual of our audience. Also, the fact that we have a lot of home service links as well in the Beaver Creek podcast with too, but they don't do any maps anymore, and that happened several years ago with budget cuts that happened. And I think it's one of the most frustrating things for visitor centers. We actually print, we have like one of their old maps left to print it, and we make copies of it. And then we got files from, like the PDF files from Cape Perpetua, and we pay to have those printed because they're so highly coveted and they want to have them, but the state park refuses to actually, and it really is budget cuts. And, but I think that there's a place for paper. And even when, yes, I think that as much as we can get away from it, we should, but there's always going to be a place for having that tangible object to hold. And the people who don't want it won't take it, and they'll maybe take a picture, but the people who do want it, it's nice to have.
So
Good perspective.
Adam, is that the plan then, is to have at least one, like the existing one that's there now, one big map at a main entrance to the park where people can come?
Well, we don't have
photo of it?
a main entrance.
No.
Well, I mean,
That's
theoretically,
the
the
problem.
commons, I
Yeah, this is-
be the main entrance, but so how will the maps be distributed? We have a here, you are here map at all 6 entrances?
No, probably not, although, I mean, well,
Yeah.
should we go over all?
I don't think we want to go into all the details right now, just mainly update and then information questions that we can take, but just I think to give you where we've come so far is to have the maps in the holders at the Yachats trails signs at all 6 entrances,
But that isn't my question. Yeah, I understand that.
but not a big
We're not
sign,
gonna have 6.
not.
So how many and where is kind
So-
of something to think about. You don't have to answer.
Yeah, so I think certainly where it is now at the Commons entrance to the park.
Right, although
In another entrance.
Just look in it.
there's that kiosk behind the commons that nobody looks at.
Yeah,
And in fact, there's 2 signs on the back of there that until
yeah, I didn't know.
did this project, I didn't even know they were there.
Yeah, right.
We're talking about taking those signs out of there and putting 2 of them to block the electrical box by the charging station. So that would be 2, and then the other 2 maybe right at the entrance,
Down closer to the platform.
closer to the park,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
And then make the trail to the
Yeah.
median like more visible, like it's a welcome, like.
Yeah, clean up the trail. Maybe we could get trails involved.
Trails up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's a short stretch.
a little more gravel down there. Yeah. So I think the 2,
Inside jokes for Parks and Commons.
the 2 other things that we just are going to be working on is the plants themselves and identifying them. And I'm looking in here, like there's a list of some of the ones we could consider. And I don't know if Lauren, you'd be interested in a field trip in a week or 2 with us out there? Yes. Oh, that would be fantastic. So maybe when you get back, we'll get
Sure.
that on the calendar.
One
Okay.
other question about the plants. So is the plan to like, I've been in botanical gardens where they have a stake with a number on it and it corresponds to something on the brochure or the map. And there's other ones where they actually have sign in place with the genus and the common name at each plant.
We were thinking of signs about that size in front of the plants that are gonna be there year after year,
The major one.
major ones. With probably the common name and maybe a QR code to link to more details
On
about
that same.
Yeah.
sign. Uh-huh.
on
Yeah.
the Latin name or whatever.
And then, go ahead.
The Goodman Garden had a kind of format that was fairly successful. The common name, the botanical name, then there was a brief description, say flower, which you don't see all year round.
Hmm.
And it's interesting, but it was still, I think it was 3x5 by the it was all done.
That might work.
Pretty simple.
Yeah.
It was very effective.
Did you fit a QR code on there too?
I don't know. Yeah, we want to keep them small.
Yeah, I agree. I don't want it to be so invasive that they detract.
Yeah.
just.
Well, and also it was brought up there, the Darlingtonia trails down in Florence. I haven't been there in years. We keep meaning to go back and just
Many
keep
years.
driving by, but now I want to go back and kind of look at their signs and take a look there, so.
They're carnivorous.
Yeah.
Someone, just as an aside, someone tried to plant them in the wetlands here a couple of years ago. And I thought it was a great idea. I thought it would thrive.
They didn't make it.
Didn't make it.
It's a very, very
Disappointing.
They
specific.
need straight sand probably.
Well, it's boggy, right? I mean, and it's boggy in there.
And then I think at the end of our subcommittees, ideas, we'll bring them to Bobby. And I think I asked you how you'd like to get that information, so we can decide that later. But whether you want bullet points or how best to give you the information when we're done. So-
Are you guys gonna present that to us, to the committee?
Yeah, oh, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that's assumed.
We did talk about maybe a wayfinding sign in the middle of the park under that tree, the big tree.
Where the platform is,
Yeah, where
that,
the platform is, and maybe set it so that it would block, there's like a little access where you could go between the fence and the tree and kind of get into the part that you shouldn't be walking in, so we could put it there and have it, I mean, that's a central point anyway.
Mhm, mhm.
If you have a big sign, that would be the you are here, with paths going every which way.
because there's a bunch of, takeouts from that one spot.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Just to your comment or question about how to give it to me, I think that we should set up a meeting with your group and then you guys could present it to me and we could, go over, have a bullet list for me to have
Mhm.
in the information, but then we could go over all of the things that you discussed
Okay.
and found. And because I feel like in that live conversation, there's so much more detail that can come from a list that's sent. So I think that would be a great way. to-
Agreed, okay, yeah.
just one other thought I've had, and Bob, you'll remember this from years ago when we were planning the Sunset Parks. Having a potential crosswalk at where Fifth Street roughly would be, where it goes from the 804 into the Forest Trail. It would be partly for safety, but more for wayfinding, so people know if you're on the 804, oh, I can cross here and there's a trail heading into the forest. So that's a potential thought that would be,
So, Bobby, correct me if I'm wrong, but Molly and I talked about signing that. And I believe we want us to wait until we're ready to that plan. Perfect. So you can be every time.
The one that would be part of this wayfinding section of the master plan, and I think that even like these plans, they can be labeled and identified, but the bigger picture of it could be identified in this full wayfinding section of the master plan, this whole.
This may be a can of worms and it doesn't have to come up now, but when we're talking about Prospect Park a few months ago, remember talking about designing wayfinding signs for all of the city trails that looked the same, color scheme, logo, whatever it was. So when we get to doing this wayfinding from Sharon stuff and from the wetlands, are we gonna try to then retrofit some of the other signage around town? All the yachts, trail markers and all of that? I think if we're gonna do it, we should do that too.
100%.
Yeah.
You have a hand behind you there.
Rosa,
This
thank
might
you.
just be going way too far,
That's what I,
unnecessary, but thinking of just like all of the plants that are native to the area, someone mentioning the 804 and the trails that go along the 804 that a lot of people don't know about. All of the life that grows on those trails that are adjacent to the 804, where all of like the mushrooms and such grow. I find all kind of forage spectrum. It's a lovely area, but a lot of people have no idea about what is even hidden behind the 804 pattern and all those hidden trails.
I'm not sure we want to share that. I don't want someone else.
Good
coming in.
point, right?
It might be going too far.
We'll think about it.
So I hear about that.
Yeah, Bob.
Wait, what is it known about?
804.
It's like riding along the trail right there with the. Off of.
Adobe.
That's just, yes.
Yeah, that's all. There's some state parks. Private property there. I know there's one section, future goals.
Yeah. Yeah, I can educate you on the whole trail and it's small.
Okay. All right. Any final comments on that project?
Thank you, guys. That's, good
Yeah.
along.
Yeah, we're having a fun time. It's good. Yeah. Okay. All right, then, let's see, next up will be, weeds, yay.
Boy.
And we're not gonna get in the weeds on this one, okay? We are committing to each other on that, right? And, I mean, really, there's a lot of history behind this as I kind of looked back, and this is not the first attempt to rework the noxious weed ordinance. So it's just not, it may be as big a deal as it may seem, but our job, as I understand it, and sent you the replies as well as some of the prior conversations we've had a couple months ago with our group, that our job's pretty straightforward. We want to look at the plant identification, what those plants are, and a schedule based on, for remediating, removing them based on the plant's seed and flowering timelines. So Ron,
So I would
take
just
it
like,
away.
yeah, well, I don't have a major presentation, but I spent some time today. I just picked 9. I sent everybody on the commission a copy of this, just so you guys would know what I was doing, but I picked 9 of what I consider to be the most commonly invasive species. And I researched when the best time to eradicate them is and what the best methods are, short of using any, chemicals.
Mhm.
And so if you guys take a look at this, maybe I did most of the work that we really need to do.
Would you state again where you looked at a website?
I looked at, the main one was the Oregon Weed Board. And no, it's not a marijuana. Sounds like it might be, but it actually isn't. And then I also looked at the Washington Weed Board, because they also had a couple of the species that I thought were important it's pretty straightforward, but nothing is simple. But some of them, as we know, some of them you have to smother them. You gotta cover them with black plastic for 2 years.
Mhm.
Blackberry, that seems to work with blackberry. Some of them you've got to do it for 5 years in a row. You got to dig them up and cut them down. And some of them you have to catch all the seeds when you pull them out. So, because if the seeds get on the ground, that's a whole next year of generation. And so, it's not one, and the main thing that I got from what Craig was asking is that, we had a July 1st kind of a date in the old ordinance that, things would have to be done by July 1st. That doesn't apply to everything. Some of the things are best done in late summer. Ivy, the best time to get ivy out is late summer when everything gets dry. And so, it's not just one simple thing and one simple date. That's what I learned.
Well, I want to just acknowledge the work you did in getting us started on this for at least today. You really, it wasn't your favorite thing, I know.
No, it wasn't.
But I also wanted to acknowledge Lauren. Thank you for being here. Lauren Dickinson has offered to be here today for this topic in particular. And I just thought I'd open it up if you had any comments at just what you've heard so far.
My only comment would be that I'm really here at the request of the planning commission, who, likes to keep involved in understanding of what's going on in the community. So I am the planning commission's liaison person for this particular topic. And I unfortunately haven't been involved with it up until today's meeting. And I read as much of the material as in the packet, which I thought was well put together. I think so far, the things that I've seen are very thoughtful. But I agree with you on the date. I think there are so many things that need to be done year round. And as others have said, you don't pull lightning in July 1st. You know, it's a all year round activity and it works better. When soil is more, but that's my main concern today is to bring back to the planning commission what progress has been made.
I'm glad I gave you that copy.
I feel like we're tackling two different issues simultaneously here. One is identifying which plants we don't want and aren't allowed. And when we should eradicate them and how we should eradicate them. And that's great. But the July 1st stems from the city wanting the city to look great for all the crowds that come in this week on July 4th. And that's focusing more on the lots that are overgrown with not necessarily noxious weeds or invasive plants, just grass that they haven't cut because it's vacant or it's an abandoned property and the grass is 6 feet tall. That's where that date comes from.
So, but what I
It's a
understand,
separate issue.
what I understand from what Craig's last communication with us was that the rest of that part of the ordinance is going to be done by the other commissions. And that our commission was specifically going to do this one piece,
Okay,
which is why I did what I did.
right. Okay, that's great.
That's
Then,
how I
then, so we don't need to worry about anything other than the list of plants.
That,
And the time, the dates.
so
Okay.
based on when to get rid of the plants, not how it appears, that's a different topic.
We're ignoring the vacant or abandoned lots.
So, you know, we're.
Different
Yeah.
topic.
Yeah,
we're
that's not,
We're not responsible.
yeah. I'm glad you brought that up for clarification. And I think part of that timing, my understanding is fire danger.
Yes.
Yeah, that's true too. Good point.
Yeah.
So what you're addressing here, these specific plans deals just with park area and common area, or is it?
It's about everything. We're not making that decision as a commission.
Yeah.
We're just helping the city by identifying what it's gonna take to work on the eradication of these
Mhm.
plants.
Yeah, my question is, where's this list going? Who are we communicating with? For example, is this gonna go into the noxious weed ordinance as a recommendation for property owners, or is it something the self is gonna act?
Once again, that's going to planning.
Yeah,
commission.
that'll.
They're gonna make the decisions on that.
And what we, I think, agreed on already is that we would, once we identify which plants we're talking about, we would have them in like an addendum, separate from the ordinance itself, so we could
To be
easily.
adapted. and
adapt
changed.
that.
And there's a lot more weeds and stuff than these. I
Yeah.
just picked my top 9. It was like 50 of them.
There was that appendix on the Oregon Department of Agriculture, and maybe that's where the weed board, are they a subset of the?
I don't remember. I found it directly through.
Because it was mentioned in the ordinance, refer to list B or appendix B of the Oregon Department of Agriculture. And I looked at that and it's got more than 9. It's got, I don't know, 20 or 30.
It goes to A to Z, if I recall.
Yeah, there were a lot of them, although quite a few of them, the appendix, excuse me, there was appendix A, B, and T, I think.
I did look at that.
Okay,
And A was
He was-
a certain group,
Stuff
B
that-
was the big group.
and A was stuff that pretty much doesn't exist around here, but it would be bad if it was here or something, so we can ignore that. B was the one we mentioned in our ordinance, I think. And then T was the targeted by the Department of Agriculture that they specifically go out of their way to eradicate. And I guess where I'm going with this is, I don't know that we should reinvent the wheel. They're doing the work. They are experts on it. We are not.
Mhm.
Should we just continue to refer to that list and say, that's our noxious weed list?
But then we still have to go back and identify how it should be eradicated by what means and at what time of year. Add that to the appendix so that
Okay,
if we were gonna do more than these 9, which I assume we would.
Well, and again, I think back to you, again, that's very thorough, but it's the plants and the when, not the how and all the, I mean, that's not what we're
The
being asked
when
to
and the
do.
how are kind of related.
But just again, yeah, sure, yeah.
And how much detail or how concise? For example, I'm not sure your source is wrong, but you got Scotch broom that you cut it. And I know from my experience and research that the best practices for that is to pull it up by the roots because it will come back from the crown if you cut it. And so cutting becomes if we cut it every year for 10 years, maybe it'll die. but some of those things also are stimulated by cutting, so.
This is not one particularly that is stimulated, but I mean, obviously, if you can dig them all the way out of the ground,
Optimal,
but
yeah.
you can eradicate it, this was the best method.
So, yeah,
There's lots of
yeah.
hands.
One last, they had the code enforcer for the city, he's just gone around, I think he sent about 150 notices to various residents in town. Is that correct? He's been on, because one of the residents in Water called me about a vacant lot that he had tagged it. Actually, for me, it was mowed down, so I don't know if you got the address wrong or.
That's for what it was, is just every vacant lot. Got, and hey, this is a reminder.
So that was just
What
telling
is
them
it?
people I had vacant lots.
Yep.
got it.
So that's what we're not focusing on.
It was
We-
every vacant lot, like, hey, this is just a reminder, that we want to make sure that you're keeping your lot tidy
Okay.
and clean, and we have this July 1st deadline, and if you need any help, these are these resources, and that's what it was. It wasn't that they were lots that were out of compliance. They were just,
Okay.
it was every vacant lot, because those seem to be the
Okay.
general ones that are problematic.
Okay.
Not all of them are, but that was just a straight across way to hit that July 1st deadline.
Lord, was waiting.
I would kind of hesitate maybe to describe how to remove them. And the reason is that there is even some new information that says Scotch broom. The old thing was you get the puller out there and you pull them.
Mhm.
But I think the new thinking is that you disturb the soil so much that I heard somebody say that the newest recommendation is to cut it.
Okay.
It pops up, cut it, you can't. And it's that, but also, go back to how difficult Kansas rainwater is to take care of. I mean, most people would pull the plant out, lay it on the ground, well, Kansas rainwater. Even if the flowering and the seeding is dry, it's so the common way is to remove the flowers and bag it.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the plant you can put on the ground, as long as the flowers on it.
Right.
So it becomes very difficult, and then you'd have to have a description about each one of them.
Yep.
I
And
wanted
I
to,
had one more point of clarification, if I would, I'm kind of gathering here that your task is to identify the plants. Is it the intent of the commission and the city, that the planning commission write the ordinance revisions, or how? What is the intent on that?
Sorry, I was typing. What was the question you had?
I'm kind of gathering from the conversation is that the intent that is here is to identify the plants and to maybe give some recommendations. And the question is that the intent of the city to have the planning commission write the ordinance per se.
To address the parts of the ordinance that are pertinent to private properties. And then we would take those recommendations and we would send them to our city attorney to update and as a final ordinance.
George.
I just wanted to back up what Andy said about referencing an expert source rather than a list of our own. It seems like that list will be more updated by experts as new invasive weeds show up, and we won't have to chase that. So I think to some degree, this might just be an effort of, in the appendix, it's go to this place, and those sites might also tell you how to eradicate it.
They do, that's what I found today.
So I just wanted to back that up. And I also wanted to point out, I know we're not supposed to be talking about the ordinance, but the ordinance does specify noxious weeds and invasive weeds. It talks about them very differently, and they're dealt with differently inside riparian zones and not riparian zones. So again, this indexing, whatever it is we do, the reference, I think we need to be really careful about separating the two, what is noxious and what is invasive, because in my opinion, the city can act to enforce one and not necessarily the other, but I think that's.
Bobby said something a minute ago that kind of made me pause. Bobby, you said the planning commission will be working on the ordinance for private property. Where does that leave city-owned property?
It's exempt.
It's exempt from, so I know recently you asked Trails to remove the ivy in front of City Hall. But it's exempt, we could leave it there and does anyone else have a problem with that?
We're not discussing the ordinance.
I know, but should we have a separate ordinance for?
Why is it exempt?
Yeah. Lauren,
Some of the language that I saw in the table mentioned something being
Just because the city is, the properties are technically exempt doesn't mean lead by policy or lead by example, and but technically all city properties are exempt from the ordinances. Many different ordinances.
Okay.
Yeah, so technically. This sign out here, that's the city has a sign ordinance that is the dynamic.
Right.
moving sign. We could actually have, but we're doing it at a very slow pace, so it's to lead by example.
Okay.
It's the precedents we're going against ordinance.
well, and George, to your point about resources for the information, there are, I think, like Mid-Coast Watershed and Lincoln County Soil. So those are two that have been brought to my attention.
Yeah.
That would be great resources. So I think
Green Weed Board that I found today had all of it.
that as well. So I think that's a great point. And yeah, we don't need to reinvent the wheel, so we have a draft here that has all the plants and we can maybe look at the dates. I mean, I had written down May as a time to get stuff that's starting to flower and then maybe an August time, just kind of keeping it straightforward. I'm just throwing out ideas.
The whole point is you can't do that because every species flowers and
Right.
spreads at a different time and a different rate.
Right, so, but
Can't do
I guess my point is we have to get something tangible decided upon. So where do we go from there to decide
Just turn it over to the planning commission.
for each plant and each
Appendix
state?
B and have fun with it.
Yeah, so I'd like to just feel that we have some sense of success as our commission and where we're at with this now and finishing this project. So one idea perhaps is another subcommittee, work group to finish this project. And
I think we're ready to hand it to them right now.
Yeah.
you do,
I
okay?
absolutely do.
Okay,
Which would be to just reference the experts.
That's,
That-
yeah.
That's our recommendation,
I think so.
yeah, because,
okay.
and that makes it difficult for maybe so because they want an enforceable date. So it's going to complicate their job.
They can do
right?
that for the fire section
Yes.
and that can be a solid date,
There you
but
go.
the other stuff, it just doesn't make sense. It really doesn't.
Perfect.
You didn't have one that way.
And for what it's worth, that Appendix B, I noticed when I was looking at it today was.
Oh,
Okay,
there he
I'll
is.
just finish my
Yes.
comment.
Great.
The Appendix
Kim.
B was updated, I think it said December of 2024, so it's definitely updated
Pretty quick.
regularly.
Yes, Mayor Birdie.
Yes, I would caution you strongly to consider sources other than the Department of Agriculture. You'll find that in most of the coastal sources, they identify weeds that are not necessarily listed in the Department of Agriculture. So the Forest Service, BLM have other concerns. Riparian areas have different concerns than agricultural areas. So the agricultural list is an important and valuable source, but it is only one source. It's not the final source. And if you look at, City of Eugene, City of Portland, you'll find many items that are not listed in the Department of Agriculture that those cities have identified as threats. So that's my only caution. The Department of Agriculture is not the final authority. And I'll give you one example. So holly trees are not listed in the Department of Agriculture because there are farms in the valley that raise holly trees. Holly trees are listed by the Forest Service and BLM as invasive because they're very problematic for the forest. So that's my only caution. You have to have multiple sources.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where does that leave us? Do we need
Yeah.
to find so Craig, you don't think there's a single source at all that would work for us?
No, I don't. I think if you look at some of the materials that had been included earlier, I think you'd see somebody like Portland or Eugene have very extensive lists with information. They would probably be closer than the Agriculture Department. And as somebody mentioned, Soil and Water Conservation has, their top 5 or 6. There's some additional ones on the Mid-Coast Watershed. So you're going to need more than one source. There's no silver bullet here.
Okay.
And that's part of what the job is to say for the city of Yachats, based on what we know from these other sources, what are our top 20?
So Craig, are you familiar with the Oregon Weed Board?
Yes, I am.
Is that source something that you would, from what you know, you would consider to be reasonable?
It's reasonable, but it leaves out because it's under the Department of Agriculture.
Oh, it is.
Yeah, it leaves out a lot of plants that forestry would, for example, not want to have.
Weeds them out.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, thanks.
Well, I mean, a couple ways we can go. Decide on our references and include that in our list and pick some timing. I guess I'm.
There's an existing list, A to Z, if we want to just give them the whole list, instead of just 9 or 12.
Okay.
And then, we can identify a couple of alternative sources and turn those over to them too.
Okay. Dan?
I noticed Craig mentioned top 20 is one thing he said. Are we trying to be all inclusive here, or are we trying to just say these are the ones we should focus on?
Well, I think that's our decision to make. Like this draft has, I'm just looking, maybe 25 to 30.
A to Z, that's
So-
26.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
So what's the decision? The whole list?
Looks like the list as is rather than trying to recreate more.
I
or
will
less.
take on finding 2 alternative, more local, more coastal resources to pass along to Planning Commission about where to find the details. I can do that.
Great, thank
Okay,
you.
great.
Yeah,
Thank you, Ron.
all right. Well, thank you, Lauren, for your input and hope we gave you something to take back to planning. Yeah,
I'll
okay,
get that to you, Lauren, soon.
okay. All right, next up then is our continued discussion of our commission's guidelines. And basically, I just want to start this item off by getting to kind of the realities of where our commission is now with our 2 resignations, close together, and both in leadership roles. So we have some decisions to make on that. Yeah. So I guess first of all, as we dive in here, I really want to acknowledge publicly Dan Sterling. He's just had a severe case of sciatica. He's doing much, much better. So he's wanted me confirm with everyone he's doing great.
Good.
And just a few words from my heart about Dan, that, you know, he contributed in countless ways. Always acting from his organized and very smart mind, and from his open and very caring heart. For me, it's been a pleasure and a really meaningful and fun experience working alongside Dan the past 2.5 years or so. And, you know, he wanted me to be sure and let you all know that we all, you know, we both appreciated and learned a lot working with the commission colleagues, the city staff, and the mayor. And it's been priceless. And so basically, just briefly, as for me, I am healthy as a horse and happy as a clam to have made the decision for myself. I'm going to remain chair for a while to finish up the wetlands project and to be around for the transition within this group. I mean, I really had an epiphany moment in our recent trip to Hawaii that just made it crystal clear that I needed to make some shifts in my own life, in my own time, in my own priorities. And so that's really it in where I'm at. And so basically now for the agenda item, with that all said, PCC, you know, who are we now and soon to come in the coming month or two? So.
One question before we
Yeah.
migrate to that. Do we
Yeah.
need to nominate a vice chair or co-chair to serve in your backup?
It's the perfect question, and that was right next.
Oh, okay.
So, perfect. So, yeah.
Clarification. Kimmy, do we need to have an election for vice chair?
Yeah. Yes.
Thank you.
Are there any nominations for vice chair?
I think it would be more appropriate to ask if there's anyone here who wants to serve.
Volunteer.
Well, yeah. Okay. Is there anyone who would like to volunteer to be vice chair?
Bob?
Again, everybody looks at me.
I can't, I know I can't, so I'm definitely passing.
I'll say it right now. I can be vice chair and be her backup, but I don't have the bandwidth to take that over when she fully resigns.
I don't think there should be any assumption that that would be the case.
Okay?
One thing at a time.
I don't mind being vice chair in that case.
Nominate Adam.
I second.
All in favor?
Thank you, Adam, honestly.
Thank you.
It's a nice short-term transitional piece.
Thank you. Kimmy's relieved. Okay. So as, again, we continue with our commission and what we're all about, I acknowledge all the hard work we've all put in getting here and going through all the opinions and ideas and with these changes coming up, having happened and coming up, I've just been thinking about a possible whole different way of approaching the work that needs to be done within this commission. So.
Or possibly without this commission. You said
Well, without would be a whole different level. I think it's been stated that we do need a Parks and Commons Commission for community input. Did you? Oh, okay. I just.
Got her scratching her head.
Scratching her head.
Going once,
Yeah.
going twice,
So,
sold.
yeah. So we do need and want a place for community input. You know, the PCC is part of an ordinance, so that would be a whole big thing to think about disbanding this group. It's clear this group is advisory now. I think it's all crystal clear to us and not as much implementation as maybe some of us thought it would be when we came on board. So is it something that we take a look at in reshaping the whole format of the group?
So I would put a question out there.
Okay.
Where is most of the work being done? Is it being done in our meetings or is it being done by work groups? And it looks to me from where I sit that pretty much all the work is being done in work groups. And what we do is sit around and shuffle paper most of the time. And I don't really know how necessary this even is. So I would put out there, if we're an advisory board, perhaps the advisory board only needs to meet a lot less often. And that the advisory board doesn't necessarily tackle writing ordinances. I mean, if we're the Parks and Commons Commission, why are we writing ordinances? So just putting out there a different way of looking at it. Because just to be perfectly honest, I'm one of the people that found that this commission and the work we do is a lot different than I thought it was going to be when I joined.
So I'm curious, how many of you thought that the commission's work, how many of you feel that it's a lot different than you thought it would be when you?
I'd say that's a significant number.
Okay.
And Adam, of course, may be different because you've been around on it for quite a while on and off.
Yeah, and I lived in the city for a number of years before I joined, where most of you joined almost immediately after you moved here.
Absolutely true.
Immediately, but so I got to observe it a little bit and get a sense of how things worked.
Yeah.
So I think it's worth pointing out, Ron, that policy rewriting has been cumbersome, but we're running out of policies to rewrite. So I think
Yeah.
I think some of that is going to drop off.
We got one big one coming up, though. The tree ordinance.
Yeah.
That's gonna be a tough one.
And so,
Hope he left.
maybe we won't run out of policies, but, to rewrite, but I do think it's been a bit of a slog to get through a lot of it. And, so I haven't mind, I like it, actually. It's something that I enjoy, taking a good hard look at things.
Yeah.
But I do remember the planning commission, when I started watching them a little closer, they have more regular work sessions. So they recently did away with the formal structure, but previously they were doing work sessions for half their meeting and then having their regular public meeting. Even consider something like that that's designed more to handle work group like activities.
Dan, did you?
Yeah, well, one, I would somewhat agree with Gio is that, since I've been on here a limited time, most of my experience has been chasing paper and trying to rewrite paragraphs and stuff, which is not what I thought would be going on. And I agree that work groups can be quite effective, but I wonder if we need this group for basically overall communication and knowledge of what's going on in town, because I'm on 2 work groups now apparently, and one is my own damn fault, and the other is because it came through here, but specifically, the ADA bathrooms is one work group. I would not have been aware of that if it wasn't for Parks and Commons. So
good point.
So how much of that is the important part of what we do?
John.
Well, is getting done with a work group that can't be done? What's the difference? Explain, like, to a work group in the commission.
Okay.
What more are we doing that we could be doing as a work group?
I'm going to delegate that answer to you, Gio.
Well, one of the work groups I'm on is this understage door stuff, and so that happens in a wood shop. It wouldn't happen here.
Yeah, you getting things done, you're out there physically.
The ADA design group, I guess, could have happened within this meeting. of users and there was, poring over of drawings and in this meeting format.
I would also add that work groups are, people that go into a work group or become part of a work group do it because they have some personal interest in that project.
Yeah.
Whereas, for us as a commission, we're basically all handling things that aren't in our personal wheelhouse. But as a group, they're in some of our wheelhouses.
Yeah.
And so it's more specifically oriented towards the projects that are being done rather than,
I'm gonna go back to the point I said before about needing some overview, oversight, or something to pull it all together. And an example is, without sitting here in this room, I would never heard about the storage work group. Okay, and for that matter, I have no idea what Trails or Yips or anybody else is doing, because work groups are efficient because you got a small group focusing, but nobody else hears about it. It's so isolated. So,
but it's all public knowledge. So if you want to know, you can find it all out.
all right, give me an example of how I would find out about the stage understage storage. If I didn't know a thing about
They
it.
release a report, a work group report.
And where's the,
On the agenda.
On the-
Bobby should be able to answer that. Yeah.
Bobby.
hi, Bobby.
I have a few comments. But I want this to be your guys' conversation, but I'll do a little clarifying answers, but for that, I don't disagree with that this is a good space for public knowledge of information, and right now that is being used for work groups that pertain to commons or parks, and it's being shared here. If this wasn't the space that it would be in the city manager reports to the city councils. They would be part of the city council meetings in the city manager's report. That's how those would become public information. We would want to make sure that all of the work group, there's reporting that happens on all of them. So we have our work group structure that we have is that they're task force groups for me. I have one for this building up for Public Works and Streets, and I report to the Public Works and Streets Commission right now. They're specified projects to be worked on that are, again, like more interest driven. And the benefit of it is we can meet 2 or 3 times in a month, or they can go off and then they can come back to me, and then it can be a kind of a more rapid fire work that can happen and then reported in multiple ways. We have we have some of these ongoing groups, and we have an opportunity once a month for everybody to kind of come together and talk about it and to get their report prepared. Then I get their reports to this meeting that for the work groups that pertain to this. Same will happen with some streets. They haven't, each group that happens has an application process where they identify what the specific goals are for that project, that they want to have this work group or they want to be part of this work group for. That's part of the initiating of making an official work group. So those are some of the benefits that I've leaned into work groups. Or, I'm seeing their beauty and their benefit the more and more I've got my feet wet here and got my stability and got a process and everything put to them and the whole dynamic of the city as well. Being said, like there's different things that are being worked on here in this group, like Adam mentioned the tree ordinance is something to be, that is not maybe Ron's specific interest point, but it is Adam's, and it maybe is Gio's and John, so the 3 of them could get together and be working on it. I'm not speaking for you, I promise.
Into your statement, so couldn't you just have a work group that dealt with the trees instead of as part of what we're like?
Well,
The difference is I think you get more done.
So then a work group could form for this tree ordinance, and Adam would spear this group up and you choose a few people that wanna participate with them. They would be reporting to me and then ultimately reporting to this commission because it's most related to this commission. So as you were kind of having this conversation and this being a public space meeting where these work group things could be reported on, these projects could be reported on, that could almost be the sole part of this group is maybe it's as to your comment, not as often, maybe it's a quarterly meeting and this is where everything is reported from all of the different work groups that could spur up and work on projects. And this is kind of where everybody comes together and reports on them potentially. But this is, I just wanted to make some comments on those points there and let you continue the conversation.
Well, we're gonna continue with John here.
That was really what my question was to you is,
Yeah.
is it seemed like the work groups to me are where you go to get something accomplished, like you know how to read plans, so you get together a group of guys in a group and you figure something out.
Guys and gals.
Guys,
Public maybe.
just, yes, sorry.
In my answer, I actually did say, even if we had a work session here and did work group like stuff, it wouldn't end here. There would still be the need to be doing stuff outside of the meeting. It's okay to actually accomplish the goal.
Couple of things pop out to me. Dan said that these are the places the public can hear about things. That said, that, you know, is it going to be not a commission? So if you were not a commission, it wouldn't be a place that you would find anything out.
It wouldn't be on my radar, it's true. I mean, after what Bobby said, perhaps I'd go dig deeper, but like I said, no, not on my radar.
Maybe the idea of having quarterly meeting and making it known to the public what's going on, so they can come to that one every single month. If it's for a year, and it's not to the public, because we reported on the projects that they've done. in the community. 20 people here.
Should be great.
My question, kind of to Bobby, is, I guess, what continuity does Parks and Commons bring? Because to me, a work group is something that bubbles up for one issue resolved, and the work group just disappears, never to be heard from again, basically. So is there some continuity aspect to tie these things together into a coherent plan that we do or can serve, or should we all just go home?
I think Bobby is the focal point.
What I think could be kind of an answer to that question is, you have all shown a commitment to be on this commission. You all have volunteered, you show up, you have a vested interest in the cities working specifically in the Parks and Commons area of the city's working. So you're gonna be my first go-to people if I have something that I need to work on that's coming in, you know, in that area. So that is that continuity of having those people. Is like, I know who to lean on, I know who to come to, I know where to come to for that volunteer base. And I know what your interests are. I know who to, you know, reach out to and say, hey, what do you think about this? Hey, you like that? Okay, let's do a work group for it.
Yeah.
Don't you think if it was more centered on work groups, you could even put it out to the whole community, like, we're dealing with this project, is there anybody interested in it? Whereas with the way it's working now, it seems like it's just us five going, okay, who wants to tackle the signage at the park? Where you could say, hey, we're talking about redesigning the entryways at the park. Was anybody, you know, put out a little community blog, and then you'd get, and then that project would get done and you'd move on to them.
Well, and to kind of Bob's comment, I think, and your comment you're saying, I'm seeing something that kind of symbiotic that could happen where if the structure of this was reporting on community projects and we were reaching out to community members and saying, hey, there's this work group, or this project's coming up, if anybody has specific interest to be part of this work group, then it'd be broader stroke of folks that would like to be involved, and then more people get engaged in the reporting and the process, and it might open up That's.
Yeah, the time commitment wouldn't be the same, because you'd think we'll get this done and I'm,
Mhm.
Mhm.
you know.
I would be really, really, really careful opening it up to anybody that wants to do it.
Yeah, yeah.
I was thinking that too.
Me too, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I had my mouth shut because I want to be,
Some of us want to do it, and we can't.
that, and also the thing is that, in every group, you have some folks that are, for lack of a better word, more trouble than they're worth. And there's,
I resent that.
hey, I did not. And I don't know if we.
Yeah, you're
want to
worth
the
it.
ability to kind of have it by invitation only, as opposed to having, it wide open and like all the chiefs show up and no Indians. So I don't know, I don't know how that would work. I'm just throwing that out,
Yeah, we can certainly cross that bridge when we come to it, so to speak, but yeah, it's,
But you see that in trails, like there's 30 people that show up, there's 3 or 4 that take a leadership role on the Saturdays, and you go out and you assign tasks, and you feel at the end of the 2 hours, you got something done.
And if you don't want to come next time, you don't have to.
You know.
You come when you want to, not every time.
And I think the source, the feeling of really achieving something and really contributing to something comes from that. It's you show up, you have contributed, given to your city, but it's not a long 2-year commitment. Like it's when you can do it, when you can't do it.
But somebody did a lot of work ahead of time, so they can smoothly into the 2 hours.
Nowhere, Bob.
So-
We are.
Leaders.
There would have to be a similar.
Yeah.
infrastructure
Yeah.
For other things.
So if
Yeah.
5 chiefs do show up, it's made clear to them that there's actually just one chief.
Okay.
So just a point of clarification then, if we chose to do some kind of major restructure of the commission, change the meeting schedule, even change kind of our overview of what we're actually doing, where does that leave us with the ordinance that's in place? Would we disband this commission and create a new organization with a different name and a different set of, or would we rewrite the Parks and Commons Commission section of the ordinance? Or so to me, that's one complication that we would have to figure out if we decided to do that.
So I think anyways, it's going to require an ordinance change edit with just what we've been on track with for this,
Mhm.
the guidelines that we've been working on. Regardless, if we were just to stay steady Eddie, sticking on the path we've been on, we will have to do an ordinance amendment anyway.
So that would be the path, would be to amend.
It would be an ordinance amendment.
Amendment, okay.
Any way we go.
It's clear.
Well,
Interesting times.
to be continued, next meeting.
So we've discussed the PCC guidelines.
Yeah.
We did.
Yeah,
Didn't get anywhere, but we discussed it.
We dragged them out, we kicked them around.
yeah.
So what can we say?
Doesn't even like just thoughts that are really like settling in with them on this topic at all in the moment. I mean, this is a big thing to kind of chew, is like a monkey wrench. Just like,
Yeah.
I'm not comfortable going quarterly. I feel like there's too much time between those quarterly meetings, that too much can come up or happen in that time, and I don't want to be out of touch that long.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd rather like maybe see an hour-long monthly meeting, for the continuity and aspect of it.
Yeah.
And also, as far as my reaction, I feel I just kind of got here. I still haven't figured out what we do. So going into what we don't do is very confusing.
I don't think any of us know what we do, except maybe Adam. But honestly, it's,
I think
that's why we're rewriting the ordinance, because we don't know what our role is.
Yeah.
I personally been here almost 3 years, and looks to me like my role is to shuffle paper. And that's pretty much it.
Things we do to keep them out of trouble.
to this conversation.
Yeah,
because
yeah.
I think that's maybe a pretty big contributor to the question at hand.
Right,
Mhm.
right.
Yeah.
Adam.
I do feel like once we get past rewriting our ordinance and the tree ordinance, we won't be having 2.5 hour meetings every month. Those are challenging topics, and they're going to continue to be challenging until we get them done. But after that, as we fall into more of a routine that we had a couple of years ago when we weren't rewriting ordinances, it won't be so much paper shuffling, if you will. At least that's my vision.
I really do think that the tackling of the ordinances are really gonna be best done with the split subcommittee groups, kind of like subcommittee groups that are more so than, taking it all on at a meeting, because that takes the meeting, then, it's really going through all the detail of it.
And if we were to do that, then 1 hour meetings might even suffice. If we came in
That's a really good.
with a subcommittee that had a full
Yeah.
presentation of a whole topic.
And then that lands you back into the advisory. You're hearing, you're advising, you're making some suggestions, but you're giving it back to the work group to go and do the nitty-gritty. It's what they care about. It's their passion.
Right, and being on board to do that advisory role is different than having it put on you when you didn't want it or think you were going to do it. So managing expectations, I guess, would be met. So Bob had a question.
Talking about something real.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the other thing that hits me over the head is that it's really weird for you to be figuring out what you want to do. The city should say, we need this done. Can you do it? It just strikes me as perhaps backwards.
Well, the city is asking us to do things, so that does happen. I just think that maybe a structure to consider would be, every month we meet, it's a working session, it's more the advisory.
I mean, alternating months or an hour of each.
Yes, alternating months, and that one is just a complete work session where the nitty gritty is getting done, say, on rewriting a tree ordinance or implementing the master plan, which is, I hope, gonna be the work we take up as we move forward here. There's an awful lot to consider in that master plan and keeping things moving. And, the mayor has mentioned that we should be hunting down grants and stuff like that. That's good work session work. And so that might be one structure. And in those meetings, in the working group meetings, maybe it's more than us. Maybe it's work group participants in general that are participating.
Yeah, interesting.
So subcommittee doesn't have to be made up only of commission members. So then it's essentially a work group.
It is, yeah.
One thing we might be overlooking is this group, and granted, we don't get a lot of citizens attending our meetings, but we do occasionally get some. But if we kind of do everything in work groups, we're giving up the ability to have any public input at our meetings. I mean,
Yeah.
we have to keep that in mind when we end up evolving.
Quarterly meetings, just to throw it out there, would still allow for that. I'm not saying it would be adequate, just saying that would still be an avenue. And perhaps, I think it was Bob said, if we did it every 3 months, we might very well get a lot more people involved, because this is only once every 4 times a year that you can come in and have a comment. And maybe more people would be interested in doing that, knowing that. Don't know. We'd have to try it.
As far as public input goes, do we advertise what we're talking about? Do people know to show up?
I believe the agendas are public domain.
They're in the library or the post office and outside City Hall and on the website.
People don't, before I was doing this, I didn't look at any of that stuff.
Well, that's what I was saying about general public. They're not looking at agendas. So it's almost, I hate to say the word, we almost need to Facebook it or something, as in, we're talking about this. If you care, show up,
We need to hire a web consultant, get a social media.
I didn't want to say the word.
PCC influencer.
Well, are there any final comments for today's discussion? We'll certainly keep it going. I appreciate your sentiment on this conversation we've had, I also felt it was very real and very authentic with where we are right now and how we really feel about things.
I think part of the reason that happened is because we're not writing a document. We're talking about how we feel about things and how we see things. And that lends itself to more open communication. It does.
Yeah.
One final thought then, to discuss next month. All of you kind of said this was not what you really expected when you joined. I'd like to hear what you did expect when you joined, because clearly that was what you wanted to do.
Mhm.
And maybe that can help steer us towards what we should be doing. So next month, let's hear what you all wanted and expected of this commission.
Don't want to do that right now? I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
4 o'clock.
Yeah.
But we do have one more.
And we try to keep these at 2 hours, 2.5. So,
Gonna have 5 minutes.
and Ron, 5 minutes.
It's really simple. I sent it to you guys. Bobby, I would like to have an opportunity. I tried to do it with Diane. She said I'm with you. We have a bunch of expenditures where the accounts that they're listed under don't really fit with what the expenditure is. And every account has a number, and the number corresponds. If I can give you an example, I don't want to take too much time. Well, just for example, we have the commons budget, we have the trails budget. Both have a mowing category. They're different number of accounts. And when we budget them, we don't know which Will is going to bill to parks and which Will is going to bill to commons. And there's a lot of those. And if we did have a meeting, I would come in with all of the numbers. But it would really be helpful if we could adjust some of these accounts so that when we did the next budget, we didn't have to guess what that.
Yeah, if you can set up a meeting and you can show it.
All right, I would say 15 to 30 minutes. That'd be all it would take.
I want to dig into the details of our accounting system, like it's all divided out, and it's all pretty, like it's Will that's in the mowing, and it's like very, very.
I understand that, and
see more what you're talking about.
I'd be happy to do that. So just to now give the overview of what I'm doing, I was tasked with to look at the budget, and I was hoping it would be the year-end budget, but it turns out the year end will not come out till July because the year ends at the end of June, which was yesterday. So what I've got here, which I printed out for everyone, I don't know if I'll give it to you. It's almost impossible to read it anyway, but I just did the budget through May, and I did every category, and without listing them all out, some things we budgeted under, some things we budgeted over. The bottom line is that we spent 84% of our budget for the commons through May, which means we will be a little bit under for the year. And trails, we've spent 63% of the budget. So without talking about each individual category, it looks like our overall budgeting process is pretty decent. Yeah, I think it's not specifically decent, but in general terms, I think it's fine. I think we did a pretty good job. 84% and 63%.
15% contingency.
Yeah, and we didn't spend any of the $15,000 that were budgeted for unknowns. So that's still sitting there if we needed it. So that's it, basically. We did good. The process seems to be fine. It'd just be nice if things matched up a little bit.
Thanks for keeping an eye on that too.
And lastly, I just want to start a new thing, kind of just after the meeting, stating the action items that we're following up on. So I have two. We're going to schedule the next wetlands signage subcommittee meeting with Lauren Dickinson. So I'll get an email out to get that rolling. And you get back on the 14th. Okay. And then Ron will get with on the noxious weeds, a list of the references, the expert references, and we'll move that forward. Was there anything else that anybody was gonna?
The homework assignment I gave everyone?
Homework assignment.
Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah, that one's on the agenda, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why did you join
You
the
joined
piece?
what you hoping to.
That's good, that's a very good question.
Absolutely.
That's what I heard.
Yeah. All right, meeting is adjourned.
All right,
Thank you.
thanks.